Hey, welcome in. Thanks for joining us. Tony and I are back for another one of our 20 for 20 debates. Today, we're going to talk about which former assistant has the best chance of knocking off Nick Saban. Tony, do you have a guy that immediately comes to mind when we do this debate?
I think the obvious choice here is Kirby Smart. Eventually, it's going to have to happen, right? I mean, the guys came so close to knocking off Nick Saban. You almost feel sorry for him. It just seems like every time it's like Charlie Brown in the football. Every time he gets close, it gets yanked away from him. A lot of times he's the one yanking it away from himself. It seems like, but no, I think Georgia's a great program. They always seem to play Alabama close in recent years. I could definitely see him finally getting it eventually. I'm not sure if it's this year, but if you made me pick, you're making me pick something that's never happened. So
Yeah.
if I'm picking though, I think maybe Kirby Smart because I think he has the best team.
Do you think that Kirby Smart, you know, do you think he every now and then he has those sort of nightmare moments where he just thinks about play calls that he made in those two games and he's like, I should have done that different.
Yeah. Oh, I shouldn't have done this weird fake punt. Like, yeah. I don't know. I mean, he's got some heartbreaking games, so I'm sure he has nightmares about them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't know. It kind of not to rag on Kirby, but it does kind of seem like Alabama's on his mind a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
perhaps he does have those moments.
Yeah, I mean, coming that close, it is hard. But despite how close he came, Saban has always had the answer, just enough to pull it out. So I think I would agree with you. I think Kirby Smart has the most talented roster right now, but that's not who I'm going to pick. Kirby Smart, he's going to get the chance to play Saban in, I believe, the third week of the upcoming season. But after that, he has to make the SEC championship game or the playoffs, as we've seen, and so does Nick Saban. And I just think, we sort of saw last year, both teams aren't going to make it every year. Alabama and Georgia for the next decade, or for however long Saban remains in Tuscaloosa, those schools will probably almost always be the favorite. But the favorites don't always both make it to Atlanta. So I just think that's a lot to ask of Kirby Smart. I think if he's going to be the answer here, he might have to win this year. And I just don't think, he's moving on from a lot of really talented offensive players that just went in the draft. I know Alabama's moving on from a lot of those guys too, but I just think Kirby's going to kind of need to catch Saban in a year when maybe Saban's changing quarterbacks and Kirby's not. So I don't feel like Kirby Smart's the guy here. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say Ole Miss's Lane Kiffin is the former Saban assistant with the best chance to beat Nick first. We've seen Ole Miss have a lot of success in recent history against Alabama. Um, and I just think the way that game normally lines up on the schedule, it's not always going to be the biggest. I think that rivalry is going to get a lot bigger with Kiffin there. But, like even looking ahead to the season ahead, I think it's at Ole Miss 2 weeks after the Georgia game. Um, you know, the Georgia game is definitely going to be on the players' mind a lot more than the Ole Miss game will be, I think. Um, and I think 2 weeks after a slugfest against Georgia, that could be the right time for a hungry Ole Miss team to catch Alabama, maybe with some key injuries. So for me, I'm just going to go Ole Miss. I think Lane Kiffin wants this more than he's wanted anything. Talk about a guy that has Alabama on the mind, whether he's saying good things or bad things. I think Lane Kiffin does an interview about Alabama every single day. So,
Well, if you look at the last time he played Nick Saban, it was a pretty close game at Tennessee.
mhm,
The Rocky Block game, with Terrence Cody blocking at the last minute, the last second field goal.
mhm,
He might have already. Well, at that time he wasn't a Nick Saban assistant yet, so it
yeah,
wouldn't have counted. But he's obviously proven that he can go toe to toe with Nick Saban in a game. He's obviously going to recruit well you know
mhm,
as he has in recent years. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I think regardless of whether he actually does it or not, he's going to be a thorn in
mhm,
Alabama's side. Whether it be through a recruiting standpoint or just a maybe getting that odd game, maybe, that upset, like you
Mhm.
said, we've seen Ole Miss play Alabama tough for a couple of years. So it'll be interesting. I'm sure, Alabama will have to hear about it for a while if they lose to Lane Kiffin as well.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine the Twitter feed from
Yeah.
Lane Kiffin?
Can you imagine the after game,
Yeah,
just the Twitter game right afterwards, the last, Lane wouldn't take or he'd definitely take advantage of his 24-hour rule
mm,
and certainly enjoy it, I bet.
yeah. I don't. Lane Kiffin might break his 24-hour rule for that one if it
Right.
happens. But yeah, I think Lane Kiffin. I think his best case is, we've seen everywhere he's been, he can recruit. And the other thing I think we've seen Kiffin prove over and over again is that he can get creative. And I think if you're going to beat Nick Saban, uh, Kirby, so far, in my opinion, has kind of tried to beat Alabama by being Alabama. And I think, we've seen the teams that typically beat Alabama. Maybe they don't. Maybe they throw caution to the wind and they're a little creative with their offense and they take chances and maybe not crazy fake punt chances, but reasonable reasonable, decisions to go for it at certain points. And, I think Kiffin maybe has that mindset. And Kirby, so far, I think he's a little too cautious, a little too similar to Saban to beat him in his own game.
What about Jimbo Fisher in Texas A&M? Kind of maybe I think a lot of people have seen him as a sleeping
Mm-hmm.
giant. It just a sleeping giant so far that hasn't woken up.
Yeah, Jimbo Fisher, I feel like, a year ago, we might have both said Jimbo Fisher first. Or we might have thought about him a little more. It's, you know, and if you actually look at the game last year, I think, it was a little more competitive in the moment than maybe it felt even right after, at least in my opinion. I don't know. Jimbo, he just, when I watch Jimbo, whether it's been at A&M or whether it was at the end at Florida State, just seems like he should be doing better than he is. Like Jimbo seems to be underachieving the last 4 or so years of his career.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of expectations when it comes
Mm,
to Texas A&M, and it's just tough to be in the SEC West, and so um, I do think he has the capability to recruit and to build kind of a
mm,
monster over there. It's just it's really tough to do that when LSU is in the division, and so is
mm,
Alabama, and so is Auburn as well.
mm.
I don't necessarily know if it's a knock on Jimbo as much as it's just really hard to build up a team in this division, especially when you
Mm,
have these established powers that are just
mm.
never seem to go away.
Yeah, I think Jimbo's probably not the exciting pick, but I would not be shocked if Jimbo is the answer here.
And this is not becoming better than Alabama. This is just beating them once.
Yes,
So
yeah, yeah, which was definitely my argument with Kiffin is Kiffin doesn't have to be better than Alabama. He doesn't have to be ranked higher than Alabama. He doesn't have to have a winning season. He just has to catch Alabama at the right time with the right, even fluky circumstances that Ole Miss has somewhat relied on in this series in the last several years. But yeah, I mean, Jimbo, there's a chance that A&M gets this thing rolling. We would probably think a little higher of A&M overall if they hadn't had to play Alabama, LSU, Auburn, and Clemson last year. Like just a ridiculous schedule that A&M
that's
had to
true.
fight through last season. Um, so yeah, I mean it's possible A&M would have finished against a regular schedule. A&M might have had two close losses to two of the top teams in college football, and maybe we would be thinking, oh, A&M top 10 lock next year, but it's definitely not the exciting pick right now.
Yeah, and Alabama has a habit of dropping games it shouldn't. I think
Mm,
its record against the big teams is usually a little bit better than like maybe dropping the odd game. I mean, look at the last time A&M beat Alabama. It's like they were a
mm,
good team, but they shouldn't have won. Like you go into that game. Obviously Alabama won the national championship that year. You weren't picking Texas A&M to win inside of Bryant-Denny Stadium, but they did. So those are kind of the games that Alabama tends to drop. And so if you can build up a good team, I think Jimbo's a good coach. I think he's a good like just
mm.
in-game coach as well. So who knows?
So we've talked about sort of those guys, and I think those are going to be the favorites that people think of. Two other names in the list. We've obviously got Will Muschamp and Jeremy Pruitt. None of those guys just even with Pruitt playing Alabama every year, Tennessee overall just seems to be such a project still right now. Obviously, they've sort of made some strides, and they certainly played Alabama well last year. But I can't imagine that Pruitt's going to have a better shot than any of those other guys right now.
The only thing I can say for Pruitt is one day, kind of the same thing I said with Kirby. So one day Tennessee's going to beat Alabama again. How long is he going to be at Tennessee for that to happen?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just these streaks like this are, they're eventually one day they have to end. And if Pruitt's in that position, maybe he like you said, look at last year's game. It was a lot more competitive than Tennessee games in the past. So that's at least a step in the right direction for him. Do I think that they're going to win this year in Neyland? No. But that might be one of his better shots.
Yeah, and so, I mean, there's some other guys floating around. Mel Tucker's up at Michigan State. We're not really going to spend time getting into all the names because, frankly, they don't have games on the schedule or, their programs aren't in a position to beat Alabama right now. But the one name I want to throw out before we get out is I think Mario Cristobal might be the sort of the sleeper on this list. And the only reason he's not my pick is just because so many things have to happen for Oregon to even play Alabama. If Oregon and Alabama played every year, he would absolutely be my pick even over Kiffin.
I don't agree. Alabama doesn't lose the Pac-12 teams. I mean, I guess I would agree with your pick that Mario Cristobal could be the next assistant to beat Nick Saban because he's such a good coach that he'll get another program that's not Oregon. I don't see a Pac-12 team beating Alabama. First of all, they're not going to schedule a game at Oregon, and they're probably the way it's going to work is they're probably not going to have like a home and home. So they're not going to really play in the regular season where maybe he could catch, Alabama off guard. He's probably going to have to play him in the playoff and probably in a semifinal game. And in that case, I just don't see it. I don't see an Alabama team that has a chance to prepare for just until the Pac-12 does something. I'm never going to believe in it. I've just seen this story so many times, and I'm guarantee I'm going to see it again during the opener. Alabama's going to come in, just absolutely wreck a Pac-12 team and leave. It's every time I see this story, it ends the same way. So to think that Mario Cristobal is a great coach, I don't think he has the team to do it.
Well, it's not a story you see very often. Alabama doesn't play that many Pac-12 teams. But my case for Cristobal, I love what he's done in the trenches. Oregon's really built up the offensive line and the defensive line. And, obviously they just lost Justin Herbert. Oregon's going to be in a little bit of a building phase right now too, most likely. But I still think just in terms of building a program, I just think Mario Cristobal, in my opinion, is right up there with Kirby Smart and Jimbo Fisher. And I think, he can build a roster capable of beating Nick Saban once. Now, I agree. The problem is, when is Oregon and Alabama going to play? And that's why I think he's a long shot, because you're right. They basically have to meet in the playoffs. And even if they both make the playoffs in the same year, they might be in different semifinals. And then maybe it doesn't even matter. So I definitely think he's a long shot. I don't know what Vegas would put the odds at, but I might put a little bit on him just because I think he might pay off in the long run if they even play.
Yeah, I was even talking about the potential of a home and home, but to be honest with you, the Alabama schedule is, pretty much drawn out. Somebody would have to cancel at that point. Alabama schedule has been drawn out since till like the 2030. So
yeah, I think I know who Alabama's going to play when I turn like 45, right? Like
right, yeah.
Book it. I mean, there are, we're like probably 5 years away from games being scheduled that, we'll be like, oh, it'll be nice when like our kids can watch that on TV.
Yeah, right.
It's just ridiculous. But yes, I think that's where we'll stop, for today. But definitely, we love reading y'all's comments. Comment and let us know, because I think this is the one that we could get the most diversity in answers. I expect Kirby Smart to be the favorite from a lot of y'all, but I would just encourage y'all to really give Kiffin some thought. I think Kiffin is the move here. Kirby Smart, he had his chance. He blew it already. I don't see that coming back to him. So comment on the video. Let us know who you think it's going to be. And like and subscribe so y'all can keep up with us. We got a couple more of these episodes in the 20 for 20 series. And then we got a long off season ahead. So, we'll have to come up with something else to do after this. But thanks for joining us.